Why did soda fountains become America's social centers? Was it the fizzy drinks that drew people in, or something deeper brewing beneath those marble counters? How did a medical treatment evolve into the heartbeat of entire communities, and what makes us pine for places most of us never actually knew? Picture yourself walking into an 1807 pharmacy. The sharp scent of sulfur and quinine would hit you first, nothing like the sweet vanilla you might expect. That stern pharmacist behind the counter wasn't mixing milkshakes. He was preparing carbonated mineral water, a serious medical treatment for everything from indigestion to hysteria. The whole place felt more like a laboratory than anything remotely social. This journey through bubbling waters and unexpected transformations will reveal how Americans accidentally invented their most democratic social spaces. You'll discover the strange medical theories that started it all, the gradual sweetening that nobody saw coming, and the human need for gathering places that transcended class and gender. As these stories unfold, your breathing might naturally deepen, your thoughts settling like sediment in still water, finding that quiet space where history becomes a gentle current, carrying you toward rest. Consider subscribing for more stories that transform forgotten histories into peaceful nighttime journeys. Drop a comment about your favorite childhood drink. Mine was always root beer, though after learning what the original versions contained. I'm grateful for modern recipes. Take a moment to dim your screen just a little. Let your eyes adjust to softer light and allow yourself to sink deeper into wherever you're resting as we begin our journey into America's fizzy past. The year is approximately 1807, and you're observing Benjamin Silliman's laboratory at Yale College. The professor has recently returned from Europe carrying peculiar equipment, an apparatus for impregnating water with what he calls fixed air. We'd recognize it as carbon dioxide. Silliman isn't thinking about refreshment or social gatherings. His mind is entirely focused on medicine, on replicating those famous European mineral springs that supposedly cured everything from melancholia to gout. The science seemed almost mystical to early Americans. Natural carbonated springs like those in Saratoga, New York, had been drawing health seekers since colonial times. Indigenous peoples had known these waters for centuries before that, though their understanding differed considerably from the European medical theories now being applied. According to contemporary medical journals, carbonated water could stimulate digestion, purify blood, even cure consumption, though we now know tuberculosis required very different treatment. Inside these early pharmacy laboratories, dark wooden shelves held rows of glass bottles, each containing mysterious compounds and tinctures. The carbonation apparatus itself combined beauty with danger. Copper tanks connected to lead-lined chambers, pressure gauges that occasionally failed catastrophically. The process demanded mixing sulfuric acid with marble dust or chalk, generating carbon dioxide gas that was forced into water under tremendous pressure. Historical accounts describe several instances of containers exploding, coating entire pharmacies in sticky medicinal syrups. I'd probably have stayed well clear of the whole operation. The distinctive smell would immediately tell you this wasn't about pleasure. Sulfur compounds, believed to purify blood, created an egg-like stench. Iron salts turned the water rusty brown, supposedly treating anemia. Quinine made everything intensely bitter, though it actually did help with malaria. The combinations pharmacists created seem almost comical now. Carbonated beef broth for invalids, fizzy cod liver oil for unfortunate children, sparkling vinegar tonics for various female complaints. Each prescription more unappetizing than the last. By the 1820s, pharmacists throughout America were investing in carbonation equipment. The cost was staggering, sometimes exceeding a year's typical income. But potential profits justified the risk. A single glass of carbonated water sold for 5 cents, when laborers earned perhaps $1 daily. Customers paid these prices believing in genuine medical benefits, though the theatrical presentation certainly added perceived value. The performance aspect became increasingly important. You'd observe the pharmacist in his formal attire, precisely measuring powders on brass scales. He'd explain each ingredient's properties, using Latin terminology that sounded properly scientific. The carbonation process itself became theater, that dramatic hiss as gas met water, the careful pouring to preserve precious bubbles, the ceremonial presentation in special glassware. Customers purchased more than medicine. They were buying expertise, authority, and entertainment. Medical journals from the 1820s and 1830s overflow with enthusiastic testimonials. Physicians prescribed carbonated waters for an astounding range of conditions: hysteria, melancholia, dyspepsia, consumption, dropsy, gout. The list seems endless. Some doctors even claimed carbonated water prevented cholera, an assertion that would prove tragically incorrect during the devastating epidemics of the 1830s. The medical establishment's embrace of carbonation seems almost religious in its fervor. Evidence suggests these early fountains remained strictly medicinal, but human nature was already working its subtle changes. Pharmacists noticed customers preferred their medicines sweetened slightly. Others observed that people lingered after drinking their prescribed waters, chatting with fellow patients, comparing symptoms and treatments. The pharmacy was becoming something beyond a medical dispensary, though nobody quite recognized the transformation yet. Those early pharmacists would probably be horrified, knowing their serious medical equipment would one day serve banana splits. Their scientific apparatus, transformed into backdrops for teenage romance. Their careful pharmaceutical preparations replaced by root beer floats and ice cream sodas. Then again, maybe they'd secretly appreciate the joy their inventions eventually brought. This transition from medicine to social space happened gradually, imperceptibly, like those tiny bubbles rising slowly through thick syrup. Each small change seemed logical, practical. Add sugar to improve the medicine's taste. Install chairs so weak patients could rest. keep fountains running continuously rather than mixing individual doses. Before anyone realized it, pharmacies looked less like medical establishments and more like something entirely unprecedented. Pharmacy ledgers from this period reveal fascinating details, though they require careful interpretation. Purchase records show gradual shifts in ingredients. Less sulfur and quinine ordered, more sugar and vanilla appearing. Newspaper advertisements evolve from purely medical claims to subtle hints about taste and refreshment, though always maintaining that essential veneer of health benefits. Evidence points to Americans wanting something beyond medicine, even if they couldn't articulate it yet. Perhaps most intriguing about these early fountains, based on available historical records, was their unexpectedly democratic nature. Unlike taverns which primarily served men, or tea rooms catering to ladies, the pharmacy fountain welcomed everyone. Anyone could claim medical need for carbonated water. Rich or poor, male or female, young or elderly, all stood equal in their supposed need for treatment. This accidental egalitarianism would become the fountain's defining characteristic, though decades would pass before its full flowering. Scholars continue debating exactly when these medical fountains began their social transformation. Some argue the shift started immediately. Others point to specific innovations in the 1830s. The evidence remains frustratingly incomplete, with most pharmacy records focusing on finances rather than social observations. Standing in one of those early pharmacies, you probably wouldn't recognize it as the birthplace of a social revolution. Everything smelled medicinal, looked like a laboratory, functioned as serious business. But something was beginning, something that would fundamentally transform American social life. Something that started with a simple belief that bubbles could cure what ailed you. But those early pharmacists couldn't have imagined that someone in Philadelphia was already planning changes. Someone who understood that Americans didn't really want medicine. They wanted something far more intoxicating. They wanted magic and marble and mirrors. The transformation begins in Philadelphia around 1832, when a French perfumer named Eugene Roussel decides that medicine shouldn't taste like medicine. You're watching him in his shop on Chestnut Street, adding rose water to carbonated water, then orange flower essence, then something he calls cream of roses. His customers aren't sure whether they're drinking perfume or medicine, but they keep coming back, and more importantly, they start staying longer. Roussel's innovation seems simple enough, but it triggers something unexpected. Other Philadelphia pharmacists notice his success and begin their own experiments. Elias Durand, another French immigrant, installs an elaborate marble counter in his pharmacy, imported from Italy at shocking expense. The marble keeps everything cool, but more than that, it creates an atmosphere of luxury, of permanence, of something worth gathering around. You can picture these early Philadelphia fountains evolving week by week. The medical bottles gradually moving to back shelves, replaced by gleaming syrup dispensers. The harsh overhead lighting softening, gas lamps with colored glass shades appearing, chairs multiplying from 2 to 4 to 6. Then suddenly there's a whole row along the counter. Nobody planned this transformation. It just kept happening, one small change building on another. The competition between pharmacists drives rapid innovation. John Hart opens his fountain at Broad and Chestnut in 1838, featuring not just marble counters, but an entire marble floor, checkered black and white like a European palace. Charles Ellis Hires, yes, the root beer Hires, starts as a Philadelphia pharmacist in the 1840s, experimenting with sassafras and wintergreen, creating drinks that blur the line between medicine and pleasure. What's fascinating about Philadelphia's role, according to pharmacy records from the period, is how quickly the city becomes a laboratory for fountain design. By 1845, the city has over 40 establishments with carbonation equipment, each trying to outdo the others. Some install mirrors behind their fountains, making the space feel twice as large. Others add brass fixtures that gleam like gold. A few bold proprietors even install crystal chandeliers, turning their pharmacies into something resembling opera house lobbies. The social dynamics shift subtly but significantly. You notice women starting to visit these fountains unescorted, something nearly unthinkable in taverns. The carbonated drinks provide a respectable excuse. After all, they're still technically medicinal. But everyone understands something else is happening. These spaces are becoming neutral territory, safe for ladies yet welcoming to gentlemen, supervised yet social. The drinks themselves evolve rapidly during this period. Pharmacists discover that fruit syrups mask medicinal flavors beautifully. Lemon becomes popular first, considered cooling and healthful. Then raspberry, strawberry, pineapple. Each syrup carefully marketed with health claims: raspberry for the throat, strawberry for the complexion, pineapple for digestion. The medical pretense grows thinner with each passing month, but nobody seems to mind. You'd be amazed by the elaborate rituals that develop around fountain service. The pharmacist, increasingly called a fountain operator, develops specific techniques for each drink. The proper way to draw carbonated water, avoiding too much foam. The correct angle for adding syrup, ensuring proper mixing. The theatrical presentation, sliding the glass across marble with practiced precision. These weren't just drinks anymore, they were performances. Evidence from newspaper accounts suggests that by 1848, Philadelphia fountains were serving something revolutionary, drinks that contained no medicine whatsoever. Pure pleasure beverages, though still advertised with vague health benefits. Refreshing and invigorating, promoting good digestion, cooling to the system. The medical establishment grumbles about this development, but the public has already voted with their nickels. The architectural arms race accelerates through the 1840s. Some fountains install elaborate back bars, carved wooden structures rising 10 feet high, holding hundreds of bottles and syrups. Others invest in silver-plated dispensers, each one engraved with the contents. Nectar, ambrosia, Persian sherbet, names that promise exotic experiences. The pharmacy is disappearing, replaced by something that doesn't quite have a name yet. Robert Greene, a Philadelphia fountain operator, claims to have invented something world-changing in 1874. Though frankly, every city seems to have someone claiming this particular invention. He allegedly runs out of cream for his drinks, substitutes ice cream, and creates the ice cream soda. Whether his claim is true or not, Philadelphia fountains certainly popularized the combination. The marriage of carbonation and ice cream would define American fountain culture for the next century. The customer base expands beyond anything the original pharmacists imagined. You see businessmen conducting meetings over phosphates, ladies' groups gathering for afternoon refreshments, children pressing noses against glass cases, counting their pennies, young couples sharing drinks with 2 straws, though propriety demands they sit a respectable distance apart. The fountain has become Philadelphia's democratic meeting ground. What strikes modern historians about this period, based on careful analysis of business records, is the speed of change. In 1830, every fountain in Philadelphia was purely medicinal. By 1850, most were primarily social. That's just 20 years for a complete transformation. No government planning, no corporate strategy, just individual proprietors responding to what customers seem to want. Democracy and capitalism creating something nobody exactly intended. The influence spreads outward from Philadelphia like ripples in carbonated water. New York fountains start copying Philadelphia designs. Boston sends representatives to study the phenomenon. Baltimore pharmacists place orders for marble counters. The idea is too good to remain local, though each city will add its own variations, its own personality. Some historians argue that Philadelphia's Quaker influence shaped these early fountains. The city's tradition of temperance made non-alcoholic social spaces particularly welcome. Others point to the city's role as America's early cultural capital, attracting European immigrants who brought CAF culture expectations. Most likely, it was a combination of factors. The right city at the right moment with the right mix of influences. The money involved becomes substantial. A successful fountain operator in 1849 Philadelphia might clear $50 on a good Saturday, when skilled workers earned $10 per week. The most elaborate fountains cost thousands to install, but returns justified the investment. Some proprietors owned multiple locations, creating the first fountain chains, though nothing like what would come later. You notice the language changing too. Customers stop saying they're going to the pharmacy. They're going to the fountain. Newspaper ads drop medical terminology, replacing it with words like refreshing, delightful, sociable. The Philadelphia Inquirer runs a series in 1847 about the city's best fountains, ranking them not by medical efficacy, but by atmosphere and drink quality. The transformation is complete. Medicine has become entertainment. Honestly, standing in one of these 1840s Philadelphia fountains, you'd recognize it immediately as the ancestor of every diner, every soda shop, every social gathering place built around a counter. The formula was established here: marble and mirrors, sweet drinks and social mixing, a democratic space where anyone with a nickel belonged. The mechanical improvements keep coming. Better carbonation systems with consistent pressure. Refrigeration units that don't require daily ice delivery. Syrup pumps that ensure uniform mixing. Each innovation makes the drinks better, but more importantly, makes the experience smoother, more theatrical, more addictive in the best possible way. But Philadelphia's fountains are about to face their greatest challenge yet, because certain religious authorities are beginning to notice that these supposedly medicinal establishments are busiest on Sundays. And what happens next will accidentally create one of America's most beloved desserts, though the true story is far stranger than the legends suggest. The trouble starts in the 1860s, when ministers begin noticing something peculiar. Their congregations seem oddly depleted on Sunday afternoons. You follow the missing parishioners and find them not in prayer or contemplation, but gathered around marble fountains, sipping sweet carbonated drinks, laughing, socializing, treating the Sabbath like any other day. The clergy is not amused. Blue laws, those strict Sunday regulations inherited from Puritan traditions, explicitly forbid most commercial activity on the Sabbath. But fountain operators have found a loophole. They're not selling merchandise, they're dispensing medicine. After all, people get headaches on Sundays too, need digestive aids after large Sunday dinners, require therapeutic carbonated waters regardless of the day. The arguments grow increasingly creative and increasingly thin. The addition of flavored syrups has transformed everything by the mid-1860s. You watch fountain operators mixing their own secret combinations. Vanilla from Madagascar, chocolate from Venezuela, cherry extract so red it stains the glass. Each proprietor guards their recipes jealously. Some add cream for richness, others experiment with egg whites for foam. A few bold innovators even add wine extracts, though they're careful to call them medicinal tinctures. The moral opposition intensifies through the 1870s. Temperance advocates view these sweet drinks with deep suspicion. They're gateway beverages, they argue, training young people to crave stimulation, preparing them for harder drinks later. One Methodist minister in Ohio declares that the soda fountain is Satan's substitute for the saloon. The comparison seems absurd now, but the concern was genuine. Then comes the Sunday controversy that creates a legend. According to one popular story from Two Rivers, Wisconsin, a fountain owner named Edward Berner starts serving ice cream with chocolate syrup on Sundays in 1881. But only ice cream, no soda water. Since carbonation was considered the sinful part, the stimulating element, plain ice cream with syrup might slip past blue laws. He supposedly calls it a sundae, later changed to Sunday to avoid offending religious sensibilities. But wait, Ithaca, New York has its own claim. Chester Platt and Reverend John Scott allegedly invent the sundae in 1892, naming it after Sunday because that's when they created it. Then there's Evanston, Illinois, where evidence suggests they were serving Sunday sodas without the soda in the 1890s. The truth is, we'll probably never know who really invented it. Multiple fountains were likely experimenting with similar ideas simultaneously. What we do know from documented sources is that by the 1880s, fountains everywhere were struggling with Sunday restrictions. Some cities banned carbonated drinks on the Sabbath entirely. Others prohibited only certain types. The regulations were inconsistent, often nonsensical, and completely impossible to enforce fairly. You'd have one fountain serving medicinal phosphates, while another was fined for selling recreational sodas, though the drinks were virtually identical. The syrup innovations during this period are remarkable. Fountain operators become amateur chemists, brewing their own root beer from sassafras and wintergreen, creating fruit syrups from fresh berries, importing exotic flavors nobody had tasted before. Orgeat from almonds, grenadine from pomegranates, mysterious phosphate solutions that created a distinctive tart taste. Each fountain develops signature combinations, closely guarded secrets that customers travel across town to taste. You notice the presentations becoming increasingly elaborate. It's not enough to serve ice cream with syrup. Now there must be whipped cream mountains, maraschino cherry crowns, chopped nut avalanches. Banana splits appear sometime in the 1880s, though at least 3 different cities claim the invention. The dishes grow larger, the toppings more numerous, the names more fanciful. Lover's Delight, Chocolate Temptation, Garden of Eden. The Sunday problem actually helps fountain culture spread. Families looking for Sabbath activities that won't attract ministerial disapproval discover that ice cream parlors occupy a moral gray area. Not quite entertainment, not quite commerce, something in between. You see families in their Sunday best, children in starched collars and ribboned hair, making the fountain their after-church tradition. Contemporary newspaper accounts reveal fascinating tensions. Editorial writers debate whether consuming sweets on Sunday constitutes sin. Letters to editors argue about carbonation versus ice cream, the morality of chocolate syrup, whether fruit toppings are more righteous than candy. The debates seem absurd now, but they were deadly serious, involving fundamental questions about pleasure, commerce, and religious authority. The economic impact is substantial. Sunday often becomes the busiest day for fountains, despite or perhaps because of the controversy. A successful Sunday might bring in $30, more than some establishments made all week. Fountain operators become increasingly creative in their arguments. One claims his establishment is actually a Sabbath rest station, providing necessary refreshment for weary churchgoers. Different regions develop different solutions. New England fountains often close entirely on Sundays, avoiding controversy altogether. Southern establishments tend to stay open, but emphasize their medicinal aspects. Midwestern fountains split the difference, opening after church hours only. Western territories, with their looser social structures, largely ignore the whole controversy. Evidence suggests that women particularly championed Sunday fountain visits. For many, it was their only sanctioned public leisure activity. Churches couldn't object to families spending time together, and fountains provided safe, supervised spaces. You see groups of ladies in their elaborate Sunday hats discussing sermon topics over strawberry phosphates, maintaining propriety while enjoying modest rebellion. The recipes from this era, when we can find them, reveal surprising sophistication. A Broadway Sunday from 1885 calls for 3 types of ice cream, 4 syrups, fresh fruit, whipped cream, and something called fountain foam, made from egg whites and sugar. This Sabbath special, ironically enough, contains enough calories to sustain someone for days. Perhaps excess was its own form of Sunday rebellion. Scholars still debate whether blue laws actually created the Sunday, or whether the Sunday would have evolved anyway. Some argue the restrictions forced innovation. Others contend that ice cream and syrup were destined to meet, regardless of religious intervention. What's certain is that the controversy generated enormous publicity, making Sundays fashionable precisely because they were slightly scandalous. The moral arguments gradually shift. By the 1890s, most ministers have given up fighting fountain culture. Some even embrace it, arguing that wholesome gathering places keep young people from worse temptations. A Presbyterian minister in Pittsburgh actually opens a fountain in his church basement, serving temperance sundaes after evening services. The irony is delicious. You can almost feel the social tensions easing, decade by decade. What started as moral crisis becomes accepted tradition. Families develop their favorite fountains, their regular orders, their Sunday rituals. The controversial becomes commonplace. The scandalous becomes sacred in its own peculiar American way. The chemistry of these early syrups was often questionable. Some contained cocaine derivatives marketed as nerve tonics. Others used artificial colors that would horrify modern health inspectors. Red dye number 2, copper sulfate for green, lead-based sweeteners. Nobody understood the health implications. They just knew the drinks tasted magical, transported them somewhere beyond their everyday lives. Honestly, the whole Sunday controversy seems to have strengthened fountain culture rather than weakening it. Controversy creates conversation. Prohibition increases desire. Tell Americans they can't have something on moral grounds, and watch them find 10 creative ways around the restriction. The Sunday might be America's most delicious form of civil disobedience. The transformations keep accelerating. What started as medicine became social space, then moral battleground, then accepted tradition. Each evolution adding layers of meaning, creating something richer than anyone planned. And speaking of rich, the fountains themselves are about to become architectural wonders. Because the 1880s and 1890s will bring marble, mirrors, and magnificence beyond anything those early pharmacists could have imagined. The year 1885 finds you standing before the Liggett and Myers Fountain in St. Louis, and you can barely believe your eyes. The back bar rises 15 feet into the air, carved mahogany columns twisted like candy canes, supporting a canopy of beveled mirrors that multiply the gaslight into thousands of dancing diamonds. The marble counter stretches 40 feet, imported from Carrara, the same quarries that supplied Michelangelo. This isn't just a fountain, it's a cathedral devoted to carbonation. The architectural arms race of the 1880s and 1890s transforms fountains into America's most democratic palaces. You watch as proprietors compete to create increasingly spectacular spaces. One installs a fountain with silver-plated spigots shaped like dolphins, water flowing from their mouths. Another imports stained glass windows from Venice, casting rainbow light across the marble, each trying to create not just a business, but a destination, a marvel worth traveling to see. The money being spent seems almost impossible. A single back bar might cost $5,000 when a nice house costs $800. The James W. Tufts Company of Boston, the premier fountain manufacturer, publishes catalogs that read like fantasy. The Arabian Nights model with tent-like canopy and crescent moon details. The Roman Empire featuring columns and classical statuary. The Crystal Palace with so many mirrors you lose count of your own reflection. Honestly, I'd probably have gone bankrupt just browsing their catalog, mesmerized by possibilities I couldn't afford. You notice the social dynamics these spaces create. The elaborate fountains demand elaborate behavior. Customers dress better, speak more softly, move more gracefully. The marble and mirrors seem to elevate everyone who enters. A factory worker on his lunch break straightens his tie. A housewife checks her reflection, adjusting her hat. Children are warned repeatedly about sticky fingers on polished surfaces. Everyone rises to meet the space. The technical innovations hidden within these beautiful facades are equally impressive. Refrigeration systems using ammonia compression, keeping ice cream at perfect serving temperature. Syrup pumps calibrated to deliver exact amounts, ensuring consistency across hundreds of drinks. Some fountains install electric motors, creating automated mixing systems, though most customers prefer the theater of hand mixing. Evidence from trade journals of the period reveals fierce competition among designers. Matthews Apparatus Company creates a fountain with built-in carbonation visible through glass panels. Customers can watch their drinks being made from water to fizz. Puffer Manufacturing develops a self-cleaning system, jets of hot water flooding through pipes at closing time. The American Soda Fountain Company patents a design with revolving syrup dispensers, the operator becoming a performer at the center of a mechanical ballet. The onyx fountains deserve special mention. Green onyx from Mexico, black onyx from Belgium, honey-colored onyx from Algeria, each piece unique, with veins and swirls that seem to move in lamplight. The most expensive installations combine multiple types, creating patterns that look almost alive. You run your hand across the surface, cold and smooth as water, understanding why people believed onyx had mystical properties. The mirrors multiply everything, creating infinite spaces within finite walls. You see yourself from angles you've never considered. The person next to you appears to stretch into eternity. The single chandelier becomes a galaxy. The effect is deliberately disorienting, lifting customers out of ordinary experience, making a 5-cent phosphate feel like a luxury worth savoring. Some proprietors go even further, installing automated orchestrions, mechanical music machines with drums, pipes, and strings. The music synchronized to busy periods, waltzes during afternoon lulls, marches during evening rushes. A few ambitious fountains even hire live pianists, though the trend doesn't last. The sound of conversation, clinking glasses, and fizzing sodas creates its own symphony. The fountain at Marshall Fields in Chicago, installed in 1890, might be the pinnacle of this golden age. 60 feet of continuous marble, supported by bronze caryatids, female figures holding the counter on their heads. The back bar features a working clock surrounded by cherubs, each holding bottles of different syrups. Electric lights, still novel enough to draw crowds, illuminate everything in warm golden glow. People come just to look, ordering drinks as an excuse to stay longer. Contemporary accounts describe the almost religious devotion these fountains inspire. Customers develop fierce loyalties, arguing about which establishment has the finest marble, the clearest mirrors, the most comfortable stools. The Chicago Tribune runs a contest in 1892, readers voting for their favorite fountain. The winner receives a silver-plated syrup dispenser, suitable for display. The competition nearly causes riots. You observe the class mixing these elaborate spaces enable. The marble doesn't care about your income. The mirrors reflect everyone equally. A society matron sits next to a shop girl, both enjoying the same strawberry soda. A banker and a bootblack wait their turn together. The fountain creates temporary equality, everyone reduced to, or elevated to, the simple status of customer. The craftsmanship required for these installations brings together artisans from across the world. Italian marble workers, German mirror grinders, French metal workers, Irish woodcarvers. Each fountain becomes a testament to immigrant skill, though their names rarely appear in the records. You can still see their pride in the details, the perfectly matched marble veins, the invisible joints and mirrors, the smooth operation of 100-pound marble panels on hidden hinges. Historians studying this period note something remarkable. These weren't corporate chains creating standardized spaces. Each fountain was unique, reflecting its owner's personality, its neighborhood's character, its city's ambitions. The Denver fountains incorporated mining motifs, picks and shovels carved into woodwork. San Francisco fountains featured nautical themes, ships and anchors in the tile work. New Orleans fountains included wrought iron as elaborate as any French Quarter balcony. The maintenance of these palaces requires constant attention. You watch staff arrive before dawn, polishing every surface. The marble needs daily treatment with oxalic acid, keeping it white and veined. The mirrors require special cloths, leaving no streaks. The syrup dispensers must be disassembled, cleaned, reassembled, all before the first customer arrives, expecting perfection. I can't imagine having that job. One fingerprint on those mirrors and you'd have to start all over. The photographs from this era, when you can find them, don't quite capture the magnificence. Black and white can't show the honey glow of onyx, the rainbow refractions of cut glass, the warm depth of polished mahogany. But you can see the pride in people's faces, dressed in their finest, posing before these fountains like tourists at monuments, which, in a way, they were. Some of these fountains cost more than churches being built in the same neighborhoods, a fact that doesn't go unnoticed by social reformers who argue the money could better serve society. But others counter that these spaces do serve society, providing beauty, accessibility, democratic grandeur. Arguments that continue among historians today about the role of commercial splendor in public life. The skills required to operate these elaborate fountains become increasingly specialized. You need someone who understands refrigeration mechanics, syrup chemistry, marble maintenance, mirror repair, crowd psychology, theatrical presentation. The soda jerk is evolving from server to specialist, and that evolution is about to produce one of America's most distinctive cultural figures. The golden age can't last forever. These fountains are too expensive, too labor-intensive, too magnificent for mass production. But for a brief moment, roughly 1885 to 1900, American fountains achieve something remarkable. They create public spaces as elaborate as any palace, yet open to anyone with a nickel. Democracy dressed in marble and mirrors. But even as these fountains reach their architectural peak, a new character is emerging from behind the marble counters. Someone who will become as iconic as the fountains themselves. The soda jerk is about to take center stage, bringing personality, performance, and a peculiar new language to the American lexicon. The soda jerk arrives in American culture around 1900, and suddenly the fountain has a face, a voice, and most importantly, a show. You're watching a young man in a crisp white jacket and paper hat, flipping a scoop of ice cream 20 feet through the air, catching it perfectly in a waiting glass. He doesn't even look, just keeps talking to the pretty girl at the counter, explaining how he's perfecting his throw. The entire fountain erupts in applause. The term soda jerk comes from the jerking motion required to operate the draft arms, but these operators transform necessity into art. Each develops signature moves. The double flip, tossing 2 scoops simultaneously. The around the world, spinning while pouring syrup. The submarine, dunking the glass completely under the fountainhead, creating maximum fizz. Practical techniques become theatrical flourishes, every drink a small performance. The language they develop is unlike anything else in American slang. Adam and Eve on a raft means 2 poached eggs on toast. Rec-em means scramble those eggs. Burn one is a malted milk. In the hay means strawberry. Hold the hail means no ice. You listen to them calling orders, and it sounds like coded poetry. Give me a black stick with a patch, make it virtuous. That's a chocolate ice cream cone with vanilla, and hold the cherry because cherries aren't virtuous. By 1910, the soda jerk has become a cultural phenomenon. Young men compete for these positions, not just for the wages, though 50 cents plus tips isn't bad, but for the social status, the performance opportunities, the chance to be somebody. You watch them practicing their moves after hours, perfecting their patter, developing their personas. Some become local celebrities, known by name throughout their neighborhoods. The skills required go far beyond mixing drinks. A good jerk needs to be part chemist, knowing how different syrups interact. Part psychologist, reading customers' moods and preferences. Part entertainer, keeping the crowd engaged during rushes. Part matchmaker, noticing which young lady keeps glancing at which young man, and somehow arranging for them to need napkins at the same moment. Evidence from period newspapers shows these jerks becoming surprisingly influential. They recommend new combinations that become regional favorites. They set fashion trends with their bow ties and sleeve garters. Some even influence local politics, fountains being informal meeting places where opinions form. A popular jerk's endorsement could swing a city council election, though most historians probably wouldn't believe that without documentation. The physical demands are intense. You watch a jerk during the Saturday evening rush. Both hands moving constantly, different speeds, different directions. Left hand pulling beer taps while right hand scoops ice cream. Eyes tracking 5 different orders. Feet dancing between stations. All while maintaining constant banter. Yes, ma'am. Extra chocolate. Tommy, how's your mother? 2 phosphates coming up. Sally, you're looking lovely tonight. Watch this flip, folks. The training process becomes increasingly formalized. The Liquid Carbonic Company publishes the dispenser's formulary in 1915. 400 pages of recipes, techniques, and what they call fountain psychology. Understanding not just what customers order, but why. How weather affects preferences. How age determines sweetness tolerance. How to read social dynamics and seat people accordingly. It's surprisingly sophisticated for what many consider a simple service job. Some jerks achieve genuine fame. Harry Stevens at Fenway Park invents the practice of calling out products. His voice carries across the entire stadium. Ice-cold soda here, becoming as much a part of the baseball experience as the game itself. James Ritty in Ohio combines jerk duties with inventing the cash register, solving his theft problem while revolutionizing retail. These aren't just servers, they're innovators, entrepreneurs, showmen. The romantic aspects of the position can't be ignored. The soda jerk occupies a unique social position, respectable enough for parents' approval, accessible enough for flirtation. You see it constantly, young women timing their visits for specific jerk shifts. Young men suddenly developing intense cravings for phosphates whenever certain customers appear. The fountain becomes America's most supervised dating venue. Everything happening in plain sight, yet somehow still managing privacy through coded conversations and meaningful glances. The specialized vocabulary expands beyond food orders. Soda jerker means an amateur, someone still learning. Squirt is a young apprentice. Pearl diver washes dishes. Bubble dancer specifically handles carbonation. Each role has its terminology, its hierarchy, its proud traditions. You realize you're watching the development of a complete subculture with its own rules, rewards, and recognition. The performances become increasingly elaborate through the 1910s. Some fountains install special equipment just for show, rotating syrup dispensers that create rainbow effects. Ice cream freezers with glass sides so customers can watch the churning. Carbonation systems that create controllable geysers. The technology serves the theater, making every drink an event worth watching. Contemporary accounts describe the almost mystical ability of experienced jerks to remember orders. A good jerk might track 30 different customers, each with preferences, modifications, usual orders. They know Mrs. Henderson likes her phosphate with half syrup, that little Billy always wants extra nuts, that the professor takes his egg cream without chocolate on Thursdays. This isn't written anywhere. It's all memory, all relationship, all performance of caring. The economic impact of a talented jerk becomes measurable. Fountains advertise their star operators by name, featuring Slippery Sam Thompson, master of the malted. Customer traffic follows these performers. A top jerk changing fountains might take half the clientele with him. Some negotiate contracts like athletes, demanding percentages of sales, guaranteed schedules, even costume allowances. I mean, imagine negotiating your bow tie budget into your employment contract. Regional variations develop distinct styles. New York jerks are fast, efficient, almost aggressive in their movements. Southern jerks are slower, more conversational, making each drink a social occasion. Western jerks incorporate cowboy flourishes, spinning glasses like six-shooters. Chicago jerks develop a particularly athletic style, possibly influenced by the city's industrial rhythm. Each region proud of its particular approach. The apprenticeship system becomes formalized. Young boys start as sweepers, graduate to pearl divers, then squirts, finally achieving full jerk status. The progression might take years, each stage with specific skills to master. You can't flip ice cream until you can scoop perfectly. Can't work the fountain until you understand carbonation pressure. Can't perform until you can execute basics flawlessly. It's surprisingly similar to guild systems from centuries earlier. Scholars debate the cultural significance of the soda jerk phenomenon. Some see it as American democracy in action, young men rising through merit and personality rather than class. Others view it as performance of consumer capitalism, turning service into spectacle. Most likely it's both and more. A unique moment when labor became entertainment, when service became art, when working class kids became neighborhood stars. The female soda jerk appears occasionally, though society generally disapproves. These women face enormous pressure, expected to maintain propriety while performing. Their uniforms are longer, their movements more restricted, their banter more careful. Yet some succeed brilliantly, developing their own styles, their own followings, proving that fountain performance isn't exclusively masculine territory. The influence spreads beyond fountains. Vaudeville acts incorporate soda jerk routines. Movies feature jerk characters as romantic leads. The Saturday Evening Post runs stories about fountain life. The soda jerk becomes a symbol of American youth, energy, optimism, possibility. Everything the country wants to believe about itself in the early 20th century. But this golden age of the soda jerk is about to face an unexpected challenge. Because in 1920, America is going to try a grand experiment, banning alcohol entirely. And suddenly, the soda fountain is going to become something much more important than anyone imagined. The stage is set. The players are ready, and Prohibition is about to transform everything. January 17th, 1920. And America wakes up to find its saloons locked, its breweries shuttered, its relationship with alcohol officially severed. You watch as thousands of drinking establishments scramble for survival. Some become speakeasies, hidden and illegal. But the smartest ones undergo a different transformation. They become soda fountains, and in doing so, accidentally democratize American social life in ways the temperance movement never imagined. The conversions happen with stunning speed. You see former bartenders learning to jerk sodas. Their hands still remember the pouring motions. Just now it's chocolate syrup instead of whiskey. Bar fixtures get retrofitted for fountain use. The brass rails remain, but now they're footrests for families. The mirrors stay, reflecting ice cream sundaes instead of beer foam. Even the regulars remain, creatures of habit who need somewhere to gather, even if their drinks have fundamentally changed. The Woolworths chain leads the transformation, installing fountains in every store, creating alcohol-free social spaces that feel neither prudish nor punitive. You notice something remarkable happening. Women who would never enter a saloon now sit confidently at fountain counters. Families gather where men once drank alone. Children occupy stools that used to hold dock workers. The fountain becomes America's first truly integrated social space, not by law, but by carbonation. Former saloon owners bring unexpected innovations to fountain culture. They understand hospitality, atmosphere, the art of keeping customers lingering. You watch them applying saloon psychology to soda service. The free lunch becomes the free pretzel bowl. The brass spittoons become umbrella stands. The swinging doors remain, but now they're propped open, welcoming rather than concealing. Evidence from business directories shows the dramatic shift. In 1919, Chicago has approximately 7,000 saloons and 3,000 fountains. By 1925, it has 0 legal saloons and over 10,000 fountains. The transformation isn't just numerical, it's cultural, social, architectural. An entire drinking culture restructures itself around ice cream and carbonation. The irony is delicious, if you'll pardon the pun. Prohibition aimed to reduce social drinking to get people home to their families. Instead, it creates thousands of new social spaces where drinking, albeit non-alcoholic, becomes more popular than ever. You see former temperance advocates sipping phosphates where whiskey once flowed, seemingly oblivious to the contradiction. The speakeasy influence on fountains proves fascinating. Some establishments develop elaborate fronts, appearing as innocent soda fountains while hiding alcohol operations. You enter through the fountain, order a special vanilla, and suddenly you're in a back room with very different beverages. The fountain becomes both reality and cover story, legitimate business and elaborate theater. Though I imagine the ice cream probably suffered from lack of attention during the evening rush to the back room. New fountain designs accommodate changed demographics. Booths appear for families, replacing the long male-only bars. Lighting brightens considerably. No more dim saloon atmosphere. Music shifts from rowdy piano to respectable orchestrion. The spittoons disappear entirely, thank goodness, replaced by potted plants. Everything calibrated to welcome women and children, populations that saloons systematically excluded. The social mixing reaches unprecedented levels. You observe formerly stratified communities mingling over malteds. Immigrant families next to established Americans. Working class beside middle class. Catholics and Protestants sharing counter space. The fountain's neutrality, its lack of alcoholic controversy, makes it acceptable to everyone. Common ground found in common carbonation. Former breweries desperately pivot to fountain supplies. Anheuser-Busch starts producing ice cream. Miller creates malt syrups. Schlitz develops chocolate drinks. Their distribution networks, their refrigeration expertise, their understanding of American thirsts all transfer surprisingly well to fountain products. You can taste the quality difference. These companies know how to create cravings, alcohol or not. The employment dynamics shift dramatically. Saloons employed primarily men, but fountains welcome female workers, especially during the labor shortages of the early 1920s. You see young women confidently operating fountains, their movements just as theatrical as male jerks, their following just as devoted. Prohibition accidentally advances women's workplace equality. though nobody planned it that way. Police records from the period reveal interesting patterns. Public intoxication arrests plummet, as expected, but so do disturbance calls, domestic violence reports, street fights. The fountains seem to civilize public behavior. Or perhaps sugar and ice cream simply make people happier than alcohol did. Scholars still debate the causation, but the correlation is undeniable. The soda speak develops new vocabulary during Prohibition. Bootlegger's bourbon means extra strong coffee. Bathtub gin fizz is just ginger ale with lime. Moonshine malted has extra malt powder. The names wink at what's missing, acknowledging the elephant not in the room. Everyone understanding the references, sharing the joke, creating community through coded language. You notice fountains becoming political spaces. Campaign events held over ice cream socials. Voters discussing issues without alcohol's influence. Women, newly enfranchised, gathering at fountains to organize, plan, strategize. The 19th Amendment and Prohibition arrive almost simultaneously, and fountains become headquarters for this new political force. The architectural adaptations are ingenious. Former saloons install family-friendly features. High chairs for babies, coat hooks at child height, wider aisles for baby carriages. Some had nursing rooms for mothers, unprecedented accommodation for family needs. The masculine drinking space becomes remarkably feminine, remarkably domestic, remarkably democratic. Contemporary magazines document the fountain's new role. Harper's calls them democracy's drawing rooms. The Atlantic describes the great sobering, not just of drinking habits, but of social interaction. People actually talk at fountains, remember conversations, make real connections. The fog of alcohol lifted, revealing, surprisingly, that people still want to gather. The economic impact spreads beyond direct sales. Fountains become anchors for entire shopping districts. You shop, then refresh at the fountain, meet friends, make plans, shop more. The fountain creates what economists now call dwell time, keeping customers in commercial areas longer, spending more. The sober economy proving remarkably profitable. Regional variations emerge from Prohibition pressures. Southern fountains emphasize their temperance credentials. Already dry counties embracing fountain culture enthusiastically. Northern cities develop more elaborate fountain speakeasy combinations. Western territories largely ignore Prohibition, but adopt fountains anyway, discovering they serve different social needs than saloons ever did. The children of Prohibition grow up with different expectations. For them, social life centers on fountains naturally. They don't miss saloons they never knew. You watch them developing rituals, traditions, memories all built around ice cream rather than beer. An entire generation programmed for different pleasures, different gatherings, different definitions of social space. Some historians argue Prohibition saved the soda fountain. Without the competition from saloons, fountains flourished beyond what market forces alone would have supported. Others contend fountains would have evolved anyway, that America was ready for family-friendly social spaces. The debate continues, but what's certain is that Prohibition accelerated fountain culture's development dramatically. The unexpected beneficiaries include ice cream manufacturers, syrup companies, carbonation suppliers. Industries that expected modest growth suddenly face explosive demand. You see factories running 3 shifts, delivery trucks lined up at dawn, everyone scrambling to supply America's new social drug, sugar and cream and fizz. But even as Prohibition transforms fountains into community centers, something else is beginning to stir. A new generation is coming of age, teenagers with money in their pockets, music in their heads, and a desperate need for spaces to call their own. The fountains of the 1940s and 50s are about to become something nobody quite expects. The malt shop is about to meet rock and roll. The year is 1946, and you're watching something unprecedented unfold. American teenagers, flush with babysitting money and lawn mowing wages, are colonizing the nation's soda fountains. They arrive in groups, claim entire sections of counters, and proceed to stay for hours, ordering cherry cokes one sip at a time. The fountain operators don't quite know what to make of it. These kids aren't here for ice cream, they're here for each other. The Bobby Soxers arrive first, those teenage girls with their rolled-down socks and saddle shoes. They giggle over shared malteds, passing lipstick and gossip with equal enthusiasm. You notice they've developed elaborate rituals, specific stools that belong to certain groups, coded ways of ordering that signal availability or interest. The fountain becomes their territory between school and home, a space neither childish nor quite adult. The music changes everything. In 1940, fountains played orchestrions or polite radio programs. By 1948, jukeboxes dominate, gleaming chrome and bubbling neon, demanding nickels and attention. You watch teenagers feed coins steadily, playing in the mood 15 times straight, driving adults to distraction. The fountain's soundscape transforms from background pleasantness to teenage proclamation. This is our space, our sound, our time. The economics fascinate observers. These teenagers might nurse a single Coke for 2 hours, occupying valuable counter space, contributing minimal revenue. Yet fountain owners gradually realize something important. The teenagers draw more teenagers, who draw younger siblings, who bring parents. The fountain becomes multi-generational, profitable not per customer but per community. Evidence from high school newspapers of the period reveals elaborate social hierarchies. The football team claims the corner booth. Cheerleaders get the counter spots nearest the mirror. The debate club huddles near the back. Greasers stake out the parking lot entrance, making everyone pass their gauntlet of commentary. Each group marking territory as clearly as any gang, but with phosphates instead of spray paint. The dating rituals that develop are intricate and public. You watch a boy approach a girl's group, ask if he can buy her a cherry phosphate. If she accepts, they might share it, 2 straws, faces inches apart, maximum intimacy and minimum privacy. Parents approve because it's all so visible, supervised, safe. What they don't see are the messages passed via napkin, the meetings arranged for later, the entire secret communication network operating in plain sight. By 1950, the soda fountain dress code becomes teenage uniform. Boys in leather sweaters or leather jackets, depending on their tribe. Girls in poodle skirts or rolled jeans, depending on their rebellion level. You recognize the beginning of something significant, teenage fashion as identity, as resistance, as declaration. The fountain mirror reflects not just faces, but cultural revolution. The language evolves specifically for this generation. Going steady means sharing malteds regularly. Cooling it happens at the fountain publicly, maximum humiliation. Making time involves elaborate fountain performances, boys showing off with complicated orders, girls pretending not to notice while noticing everything. The adult soda jerks become unwitting accomplices, referees, sometimes counselors in this elaborate social dance. Television tries to capture fountain culture, but mostly gets it wrong. The real fountains are messier, louder, more charged than any script conveys. You smell Brill cream and bubble gum. Hear arguments about baseball and breasts. Watch tears over breakups mix with spilled strawberry syrup. It's beautiful and awkward and electric, impossible to sanitize for family viewing. The racial dynamics vary dramatically by region. Northern fountains integrate slowly, uncomfortably, with elaborate unwritten rules about which stools belong to whom. Southern fountains remain strictly segregated, often with separate colored entrances. Western fountains prove more fluid, though discrimination certainly exists. You see the civil rights movement's early skirmishes playing out over counter space and service equality. The fountain becoming an unexpected battlefield. Kids who just wanted malteds finding themselves part of history, though honestly, some probably wished history would happen somewhere else so they could flirt in peace. The technological additions cater specifically to teenagers. Phone booths appear, allowing private conversations while maintaining public presence. Pinball machines in back corners, creating masculine performance spaces. Photo booths for capturing carefully staged romance. Each innovation designed to keep teenagers lingering, spending, making the fountain indispensable to their social lives. Car culture begins infiltrating fountain culture by the mid-1950s. You see teenagers arriving in borrowed family vehicles, parking strategically for maximum visibility. The journey to the fountain becomes as important as arrival. Cruising the route, honking at friends, racing between fountains to track social movement. The automobile extends fountain territory beyond its walls. Contemporary sociologists express concern about this teenage takeover. Articles appear about juvenile loitering and soda fountain delinquency. Parents worry their children are becoming addicted to socializing. You read earnest academic papers about the dangers of unsupervised phosphate consumption. The hand-wringing seems quaint now, but the concern was genuine. This was new, unprecedented, vaguely threatening to adult authority. The menu adapts to teenage tastes and budgets. Splitting becomes acceptable, even encouraged. One malted, 4 straws, infinite conversation time. Fountains develop student specials, discounted combinations available during after-school hours. Some create homework booths, quieter spaces where studying theoretically happens, though mostly it's just quieter flirting. Regional variations in teenage fountain culture emerge clearly. California fountains embrace surf culture, beach themes, more casual dress codes. New York fountains maintain urban edge, faster service, less lingering tolerated. Midwest fountains become Norman Rockwell paintings, wholesome and timeless. Southern fountains develop elaborate courtesy rituals. Ma'am and sir, even between teenagers. The fountain operators adapt to their new clientele. Older jerks retire, unable to understand teenage language or patience. Younger operators arrive, often just barely out of teenaged on themselves. They speak the language, understand the dynamics, know when to intervene and when to ignore, becoming part counselor, part bouncer, part Cupid. Music evolution accelerates through the decade. From swing to bebop to something new, something with a beat that makes parents nervous. By 1955, you're hearing this new sound called rock and roll. Elvis asking for nothing but a hound dog. Chuck Berry telling Beethoven to roll over. The jukebox becomes a portal to revolution, 3 minutes at a time. The pressure on teenage girls at fountains intensifies. They must appear popular but not loose, interested but not desperate, sophisticated but not threatening. You watch them navigate impossible social mathematics, calculating every gesture, every laugh, every sip. The fountain mirror reflects their constant self-monitoring, adjusting hair, checking makeup, performing femininity for an audience of peers and possibilities. Scholarly analysis of 1950s fountain culture reveals surprising progressiveness. Despite surface conservatism, these spaces allow unprecedented teenage autonomy. Mixed gender socializing, informal racial contact in some regions. Class mixing as rich and poor share counter space. The fountain operates as a laboratory for social change, one ice cream soda at a time. The influence spreads beyond America. You see photos of fountains opening in Tokyo, occupied Germany, suburban London, each interpreting American fountain culture through local lenses. The soda fountain becomes an export, a symbol of American prosperity, youth, freedom. Though probably those foreign teenagers just wanted somewhere to flirt to. But even as teenage fountain culture reaches its peak, storm clouds gather. New competitors are emerging. Places with parking lots instead of counters, with cars instead of stools, with isolation instead of community. The drive-in is about to challenge everything the fountain represents. The small-town fountain of 1952 operates as something far beyond a business. You're watching the morning ritual at Henderson's drugstore in Marion, Ohio, or maybe it's Johnson's Pharmacy in Clearwater, Florida, or Smith's Sundries in Bend, Oregon. The details change, but the pattern remains. By 6:30 a.m., the coffee club has assembled, retired farmers and current shopkeepers solving world problems over black coffee and day-old donuts. The fountain keeper knows everyone's order before they speak. Mr. Patterson takes his coffee with 1 sugar, never cream. Mrs. Abernathy wants her morning phosphate with extra cherry, light on the fizz. The teenage Anderson boy always orders chocolate milk, but really comes to moon over the Hendricks girl who works Tuesday mornings. These aren't just transactions, they're daily confirmations of community, of continuity, of belonging. You notice the fountain serves as informal employment agency. Someone mentions needing help with harvest. Someone else knows a strong kid looking for work. Hands shake over vanilla cokes, deals sealed with nothing but trust and carbonation. The bulletin board beside the fountain holds more than advertisements. It maps the community's needs. Babysitters wanted, puppies free to good homes, quilting circle Thursdays at 4. The information flow through these fountains rivals any newspaper. You hear about the Martin boy shipping out to Korea while his mother stirs her coffee. Learn about the teacher's surprise engagement through excited whispers at the ladies' booth. Discover the bank might be hiring from a conversation 3 stools down. The fountain keeper never gossips directly, but somehow knows everything, dispensing news with the same precision as syrup. Evidence from small-town newspapers reveals the fountain's central role. When Henderson's catches fire in 1954, the Marion Star treats it like a civic catastrophe. Where will the Rotary Club meet? What about the Thursday Bridge ladies? The fountain's importance transcends commerce, its civic infrastructure, as essential as the post office or town hall. The democratic mixing at these fountains seems almost utopian in hindsight. The bank president and janitor share counter space. Their kids attend the same school, eat the same ice cream, dream the same dreams. You see hierarchies temporarily suspended, though everyone knows they'll reassert themselves once they step outside. But for these moments, over shared straws and splitting sundaes, equality tastes like vanilla and possibility. The medical role persists in surprising ways. Doc Thompson holds informal consultations at the corner booth, examining rashes between root beer floats, prescribing rest and fluids while actually drinking fluids himself. The pharmacist fountain keeper bridges both worlds, filling prescriptions and ice cream cones with equal authority. Some customers trust his malted milk recommendations more than his medical advice, though he's licensed for both. Saturday becomes the fountain's Broadway show. Farm families arrive for weekly shopping, kids clutching quarters earned from chores. You watch elaborate negotiations. Can they afford splits or must they share? The fountain erupts with noise, sticky fingers, spilled sodas, patient parents, overwhelmed staff. It's chaos, but organized chaos, everyone understanding their role in this weekly performance. The romantic mythology of these fountains often overshadows harder truths. The segregated fountains of the South, where separate but equal meant anything but. The class tensions barely hidden beneath surface courtesy. The teenage girl fired for suspected pregnancy. The way certain families are served slower, charged more, made unwelcome through thousand tiny cruelties. Even paradise has its shadows, though we prefer remembering the light. Maybe I'm too cynical, or maybe nostalgia needs honesty as its anchor. The economic ecosystem around fountains proves remarkably complex. The ice delivery man coordinates his route around fountain needs. The syrup salesman becomes local celebrity, knowing every owner's preferences and problems. Local dairy farms depend on fountain ice cream sales. Cherry growers in Michigan ship directly to fountains in Maine. Each fountain anchors a web of relationships stretching far beyond Main Street. You observe the seasonal rhythms. Hot summers bring lines for ice cream. Cold winters mean more coffee and hot chocolate, though diehards order milkshakes in blizzards, claiming they taste better cold. The fountain adapts, installing heating units, adding soup to menus. Some even serve full meals, though nothing fancy, grilled cheese and tomato soup, meatloaf on Thursdays, comfort food for comfortable communities. The technological resistance in small fountains fascinates historians. While cities embrace automation, small towns prefer tradition. Hand-pulled phosphates over electric mixers, real fruit over artificial syrups. The personal touch matters more than efficiency. Customers wait longer, but receive something machines can't provide: recognition, connection, the sense that their presence matters. Contemporary accounts from traveling salesmen describe fountains as navigation points. Turn left at Henderson's, 2 blocks past the fountain. The fountain provides both literal and metaphorical center, organizing space and social life. You plan meetings there, recover from funerals there, celebrate graduations there. The fountain witnesses life's passages, unmarked but essential. The generational transfer of fountain ownership creates dynasties. You meet third-generation fountain keepers who learn the trade at their grandfather's knee. They know recipes never written down, techniques passed through hands, not books. Stories about every family in town, 3 generations deep. This institutional memory can't be purchased, only inherited or earned through decades of patient presence. Regional economists studying the 1950s note fountains' surprising economic impact. A successful fountain might employ 10 people in a town of 1,000. Their purchases support local suppliers. Their presence draws shoppers who support other businesses. When fountains close, studies show, surrounding businesses suffer. The multiplier effect works in reverse, one closure triggering others. The children's economy around fountains deserves recognition. Elaborate systems of credit and barter, trading baseball cards for soda money, doing chores for Sunday funds. learning economic literacy through cherry Coke negotiations. You watch 8-year-olds calculating tax and tips, understanding value through visceral experience. The fountain as economics classroom, teaching capitalism one scoop at a time. Some fountains achieve legendary status beyond their communities. Schwab's Pharmacy in Hollywood, where supposedly Lana Turner was discovered. Though that's actually myth. She was discovered elsewhere, but the story's too good to die. Arnold's Drive-In in Milwaukee, later immortalized in Happy Days. Though the real Arnold's was different from television's version. Truth matters less than mythology. The idea of the fountain matters more than accuracy. The political role of fountains intensifies during election seasons. Candidates must visit, must shake hands, must buy rounds of phosphates. You can predict election outcomes by fountain reception, enthusiasm, or polite disinterest. The fountain keeper stays neutral, serving both parties equally, but everyone knows their preferences, reading political tea leaves in coffee grounds. International visitors express amazement at these fountains. Europeans expecting American efficiency find leisurely conversation. Asians anticipating rudeness discover elaborate courtesy rituals. The fountain represents America differently than skyscrapers or factories. It's democratic idealism made physical, accessible, affordable, sweet. The preservation efforts begin even before fountains disappear. Some communities recognize their importance, declaring fountains historical landmarks, fighting chain stores seeking their locations, organizing fundraisers to maintain marble and memories. These aren't just businesses being saved, they're community hearts being protected. But protection can't stop progress, or what passes for progress. The interstate highway system is coming, bypassing main streets entirely. Shopping malls are rising, climate-controlled and parking-friendly. And fast food franchises are spreading, promising consistency over character, speed over sociability. The fountain's days are numbered, though nobody wants to start counting. The killing begins slowly, almost imperceptibly. In 1955, Ray Kroc opens his first McDonald's franchise in Des Plaines, Illinois. You wouldn't think 15-cent hamburgers could destroy marble palaces, but they do. One fountain at a time. The speed impresses customers. 14 seconds from order to food. No conversation required, no lingering expected, just transaction, consumption, departure. Everything the fountain wasn't. Everything America suddenly seems to want. The interstate highway system, authorized in 1956, redirects American life away from main streets. You watch towns bisected by concrete rivers, fountains that thrived for decades suddenly invisible to travelers speeding past at 60 miles per hour. The new off-ramps spawn clusters of fast food restaurants, gas stations, motels, each with better parking than any downtown fountain could offer. Convenience becomes the new community. Drive-in restaurants multiply like mushrooms after rain. Sonic, A&W, Dog and Suds. You don't even leave your car. Car hops deliver food on roller skates. Eating happens in automotive isolation. The social mixing of fountain culture becomes impossible when everyone's enclosed in steel and glass. Class distinctions reassert themselves through chrome and tail fins. The democracy of the counter replaced by the hierarchy of the parking lot. Shopping malls began consuming downtowns in the 1960s. You see families who once gathered at fountains now wandering climate-controlled corridors. The orange Julia stands where fountains might have been, but it's not the same. No stools to claim, no regulars to greet, no community bulletin board, just efficient service and prescribed pleasantness. The mall fountain, when it exists, is corporate, standardized, interchangeable. Evidence from business records shows the cascade of closures. 1960, 12,000 independent fountains operating. 1965, 8,000. 1970, 4,000. 1975, fewer than 2,000. Each closure represents more than lost business. Lost gathering places, lost traditions, lost connections. The statistics can't capture the social archaeology being bulldozed. The suburban migration accelerates fountain decline. New neighborhoods have no walking destinations, no corner drugstores, no community centers disguised as soda fountains. You drive to strip malls for ice cream, eat in cars or sterile dining rooms. The suburbs promise space and privacy, delivering isolation and anonymity. Children grow up never knowing the fountain experience, never missing what they never had. Television, ironically, celebrates fountain culture just as it's dying. Happy Days premieres in 1974, set in a 1950s malt shop that never quite existed. The Fonz holds court where soda jerks once performed. Nostalgia sells because the reality has vanished. You can't mourn what still exists, only what's been lost. The fountain becomes mythology, safer as memory than messy reality. The economics make closure inevitable. A fountain needs constant maintenance, skilled staff, fresh ingredients, patient customers. McDonald's needs teenagers following scripts, frozen ingredients, customers trained for speed. The math is merciless. Why employ 10 people when 3 suffices? Why maintain marble when Formica works? Why create community when profit is the only metric? Former fountain operators describe their final days with bewildered sadness. Regular customers stop coming, not from disloyalty but death, retirement, relocation. Young customers never start, preferring drive-thrus and takeout. You watch them trying everything, adding hamburgers to menus, installing modern equipment, extending hours. But they're performing CPR on a corpse. The culture that sustained fountains has fundamentally shifted. Perhaps I sound too harsh, but watching something beautiful die slowly makes anger easier than sadness. The racial integration of lunch counters achieved through civil rights struggles arrives just as the counters themselves disappear. The irony is bitter. Fighting for access to spaces that promptly vanish. though some argue the struggles transformed more than fountains, changing American consciousness, making all public spaces more democratic. The fountain as martyred catalyst for broader change. Chain drugstores deliver the final blow. Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, they keep fountains briefly, for tradition, for traffic. But corporate efficiency abhors uniqueness. Fountains get standardized, then simplified, then eliminated, replaced by aisles of packaged ice cream, self-serve soft drinks. Everything the fountain offered now available without human interaction. You observe the cultural losses beyond the obvious. Where do teenagers court now? In cars, in malls, eventually online. Where do communities gather? They don't. Where do strangers become neighbors? Nowhere. The fountain's dissolution creates vacuums, filled partially, poorly, or not at all. Social scientists document rising isolation, declining social capital, disappearing third places. The fountain was infrastructure we didn't know we needed. The transformation of Main Street follows fountain closures. Empty storefronts multiply. Parking meters replace bustling sidewalks. The doctors, lawyers, accountants flee to suburban office parks, following their clientele, abandoning downtowns to pawn shops and payday lenders. The fountain was often the first domino, its fall triggering cascading collapses. Contemporary urban planners begin recognizing the mistake too late. Jane Jacobs writes about eyes on the street, the natural surveillance fountains provided. Robert Putnam documents declining civic engagement, correlating with disappearing gathering places. But academic understanding can't resurrect what market forces have killed. The fountains are gone, taking their informal democracy with them. Some fountains attempt transformation into restaurants, adding full menus, table service, dinner hours. A few succeed, becoming family restaurants that preserve fragments of fountain culture. Most fail, caught between nostalgia and contemporary tastes. Unable to compete with chains' marketing budgets, consistency, predictability, the very qualities that made fountains special become liabilities. The pharmaceutical industry's evolution eliminates fountain pharmacy connections. Medications come prepackaged, no more compounding, no more personal relationships with pharmacists. The Walgreens pharmacy counter has no stools, no conversation, just efficient prescription processing. The medical excuse for fountains evaporates, leaving only naked commerce. International observers note American fountain decline with puzzlement. Europeans maintain their cafes, Asians their tea houses, but Americans abandon their indigenous gathering places, choosing efficiency over community, speed over connection, privacy over public life. The fountain's death seems uniquely American, a culture consuming its own tale. The last generation of fountain kids, now adults, carries specific memories. The taste of real phosphates, the sound of fizzing sodas, the smell of vanilla and disinfectant. They try explaining to their children, but words can't convey experience, can't resurrect the feeling of belonging, of possibility, of community happening accidentally around them. Archaeological traces remain. You find marble counters in antique stores, syrup dispensers in museums, soda fountain stools in trendy bars, fragments of a dissolved civilization, repurposed, decontextualized, stripped of meaning, like finding Roman columns in medieval walls, functional but fundamentally misunderstood. The speed of change stuns even those who lived through it. In 1950, every American town had at least one fountain. By 1980, most Americans have never experienced one. 30 years to dismantle a century of culture. The efficiency is almost admirable if you don't think about what was lost. But that's the thing about loss. It only hurts if you remember. And fewer people remember every year. But memory is stubborn, persistent, contagious. And in the 2000s, something unexpected begins happening. Young entrepreneurs who never knew real fountains start trying to recreate them. Not from experience, but from imagination, from longing, from a sense that something essential has gone missing. The resurrection attempts are flawed, sometimes comical, but they represent something important. The recognition that efficiency isn't everything, that community can't be downloaded, that sometimes the slow way is the only way. The resurrection begins in Brooklyn, 2004, where a young pharmacist named Peter Freeman discovers an intact 1920s fountain behind a false wall during renovation. The marble is cracked but salvageable, the mirrors clouded but restorable, the syrup dispensers corroded but reparable. You watch him spending weekends researching old phosphate recipes, tracking down vintage equipment on eBay, learning to make egg creams from elderly customers who still remember. He's not trying to create a museum. He's attempting to revive something he never experienced, but somehow misses. Across the country, similar discoveries and attempts multiply. The Brooklyn Pharmacy, the Franklin Fountain in Philadelphia, Fair Oaks Pharmacy in Pasadena. Each one started by people too young to remember real fountains, but old enough to sense their absence. They study old photographs, interview survivors, experiment with forgotten recipes, building not from memory but from longing, from an ache they can't quite name. The modern fountain faces impossible challenges. Commercial rents that would bankrupt those old pharmacies. Health codes that forbid many traditional practices. Customers trained for speed who grow impatient with fountain theater. You see the frustration in operators' faces trying to maintain authenticity while meeting contemporary demands. Making real phosphates for people who expect Coca-Cola. Hand mixing sodas for customers checking phones throughout the process. Yet something magical happens when people slow down enough to notice. A businessman abandons his laptop to watch ice cream being scooped. A teenager discovers malted milk tastes nothing like she imagined, better and stranger. An elderly woman tears up tasting a lime Ricky, transported to dates with a husband 50 years gone. These moments are rare, precious, probably unsustainable, but they matter enormously to those who experience them. Evidence from urban planning studies reveals why fountains matter beyond nostalgia. Communities with gathering places show higher civic engagement, better mental health outcomes, stronger local economies. The fountain wasn't just selling sodas. It was creating what sociologists now call social capital, those invisible bonds that make neighborhoods more than collections of buildings. The modern revival's attempt to rebuild not just fountains, but community infrastructure. The authenticity problem proves particularly vexing. Should modern fountains use corn syrup or cane sugar? Paper straws or plastic? Original recipes with questionable ingredients or safer modern substitutes? You watch operators struggling with these decisions, knowing that too much authenticity alienates contemporary customers, while too little betrays the fountain's essence. There's no perfect balance, only constant negotiation between past and present. The new fountains attract unexpected pilgrims. Urban planners studying community spaces. Historians documenting food culture. Artists seeking aesthetic inspiration. But mostly, lonely people seeking connection. You see them arriving alone, ordering slowly, lingering hopefully. The fountain promises something smartphones and social media can't deliver: actual presence, accidental encounters, the possibility of surprise. Modern technology infiltrates even nostalgic spaces, iPad point-of-sale systems beside brass cash registers, Instagram walls decorated for maximum shareability, QR codes linking to fountain history. The operators know they need social media to survive, but each concession to modernity seems to diminish authenticity. Can something be both historical and hashtagged, both genuine and performed for cameras? I honestly don't know, but watching them try is both inspiring and heartbreaking. The economics remain brutal. A proper fountain requires enormous investment, skilled labor, expensive ingredients, patient customers willing to pay premium prices. Most modern attempts fail within 2 years, crushed by the same forces that killed original fountains. The survivors often depend on tourist traffic, becoming destinations rather than neighborhood fixtures. Successful, but somehow hollow. Young entrepreneurs keep trying despite the odds. They take out loans, convince skeptical investors, transform forgotten spaces. Some add coffee bars for morning revenue. Others incorporate craft cocktails for evening crowds. Adapting, evolving, surviving. But always maintaining that marble counter, those swivel stools, that promise of connection over carbonation. The cultural impact exceeds the economic footprint. These few dozen restored fountains across America influence thousands of businesses. Suddenly everyone wants authentic experiences, community gathering spaces, Instagram-worthy aesthetics. The fountain becomes metaphor, aspiration, marketing tool. Even McDonald's experiments with create-your-taste platforms, offering customization and theater, unconsciously echoing what fountains always provided. International visitors seek out these revived fountains as cultural destinations. Japanese tourists photograph every detail. European academics write dissertations about American nostalgia commerce. The fountains become symbols of something essentially American, not efficiency or innovation, but the constant tension between progress and preservation, future and past, individual and community. The recipes being recovered reveal forgotten American tastes. Acid phosphates with their sharp tanginess, lactards combining milk and fruit acids, ammonia cokes that definitely didn't contain ammonia, but nobody remembers why they were called that. Each recovered recipe is archaeological, revealing not just flavors, but values, assumptions, possibilities that industrial food systems erased. Contemporary food writers celebrate fountain revival as part of broader craft movements. Paralleling craft beer, artisan bread, farm-to-table restaurants. The fountain fits this narrative of resistance to industrialization, of human-scale production, of knowing your server's name. But fountains predate these movements by a century. They're not following trends, they're recovering traditions. The generational teaching becomes crucial. Older customers who remember real fountains train young servers in forgotten etiquette. How to properly present a sundae. Why phosphates get stirred, not shaken. The correct angle for pouring sodas. This knowledge can't be Googled, only transmitted person to person, hand to hand, like sourdough starter or family stories. Some revivals attempt innovation within tradition. Vegan ice creams alongside dairy. Nitro cold brew phosphates. CBD-infused syrups where legal. You watch purists cringe while pragmatists adapt. The fountain was always about experimentation, about mixing unexpected things. Perhaps these innovations honor tradition more than strict replication would. The children experiencing modern fountains create new rituals. Birthday parties at marble counters. First dates over shared sundaes. Study groups fueled by phosphates. They don't know they're recreating their grandparents' experiences. They're just finding spaces that feel different, special, worth putting phones away for. The patterns reassert themselves naturally, proof that fountain culture answered persistent human needs. Scholars studying fountain revivals note their function as third places, neither home nor work, but something essential between, where strangers become familiar, where community happens accidentally, where democracy gets practiced one shared counter at a time. The modern fountains succeed not when they perfectly recreate the past, but when they enable these timeless functions. The question remains whether fountain culture can truly revive, or whether we're just creating elaborate museum pieces. Weekend destinations rather than daily fixtures. Tourist experiences rather than community infrastructure. The culture that created fountains has fundamentally changed. We're more mobile, more isolated, more hurried. Can something as slow and social as a fountain survive in our accelerated age? Yet people keep trying, keep investing, keep believing that somewhere between efficiency and community, between progress and preservation, between isolation and intrusion, there's a sweet spot. A place where strangers share counter space, where time slows to syrup speed, where democracy tastes like vanilla and possibility. They're probably foolish, definitely romantic, but watching them polish marble and perfect phosphates, you can't help hoping they're right. Because maybe what we lost wasn't just fountains. Maybe it was the belief that commerce could create community, that business could be beautiful, that gathering was as important as going. The fountain revivals aren't really about nostalgia. They're about remembering what we forgot we needed. They're about discovering that efficiency isn't everything, that some things can't be downloaded, that human connection still requires physical presence, accidental proximity, shared sweetness. The fountains are mostly gone, will probably stay gone, but their ghost haunts American culture, reminding us what we traded for convenience, what we lost in our rush toward tomorrow. And in those few places where marble still gleams and phosphates still fizz, where strangers still become neighbors over nothing more than carbonated water, we glimpse something we didn't know we missed. Something that bubbled up naturally when Americans gathered. Something no algorithm can replicate, no app can deliver. Something as simple and essential as sharing space, time, and the democratic sweetness of a well-made soda. The night grows quieter now, and perhaps you're feeling it too, that gentle weight settling into your limbs. The story of the soda fountain, like the bubbles in a phosphate, rose quickly, sparkled brilliantly, and gradually dissipated into memory. But what remains isn't nothing, it's understanding, a sweet wisdom about what we need from each other. You've traveled from medicine to magic, from marble counters to McDonald's, from democracy bubbling up through carbonation, to efficiency dissolving everything. The fountains couldn't compete with speed, with convenience, with American urgency to get somewhere else, always somewhere else, never quite here. But here's what lingers, like vanilla's ghost in an empty glass. The fountain was never really about ice cream. It was about the pause, the gathering, the excuse to stop moving and start being. Together. Present. Human. Your breathing has probably slowed by now, matching these words, these memories. And that's appropriate, because fountains were always about slowing down, about savoring, about finding sweetness in the pause. Let your eyes grow heavy if they want to. There's nothing to remember for a test, nothing to accomplish. Just soft recognition that once. Americans created something beautiful by accident. Something serving needs we didn't know we had until it was gone. Your mind can release the details now, the dates, the names. Keep what matters. Let the rest settle like sediment in still water. History becoming feeling, facts becoming understanding, story becoming your own quiet knowledge. The fountain's real legacy isn't in restored buildings, vintage recipes. It's the reminder that efficiency isn't everything, that some things can't be delivered, downloaded, driven through. Some things require presence, patience, willingness to wait while someone remembers your name. Feel your body growing heavier, softer, like foam dissipating on root beer, like ice cream melting into milk, like bubbles rising through syrup, then disappearing. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. Just rest. Close your eyes now. Let fountain echoes fade to silence. The clink of glasses, the hiss of carbonation, all settling into stillness, into peace, into deep quiet after stories end, after journeys complete, after history becomes memory becomes dream. Sleep is arriving, gentle as foam on chocolate egg cream, inevitable as ice melting, welcome as familiar faces at marble counters. Let it carry you into dreams where fountains still bubble, where community still gathers, where sweet and necessary mix perfectly. Rest now. The stories are told. The fountains are quiet. You're exactly where you need to be, drifting into sleep, carried by nothing more than words, memory, and the knowledge that once we knew how to gather, to pause, to find everything needed in the simple perfection of a shared soda.